Welcome to Trekkie Tuesday. Today's episode is
Journey to Babel.
Journey to Babel.
Or Babel, as Kirk says at one point.
This episode we get to meet Spock's parents, his Vulcan dad and his human mom, if we want to call her human. She's got really weird hair, in my opinion. I'm not 100. And she's got this weird collar. I don't know. And basically, Spock has to choose between saving his father and saving the ship, and he chooses to save the ship. But then Kirk and McCoy plot to make sure that he actually saves his dad, trick him, and Kirk saves the day, and Spock saves his dad, and McCoy gets his dream fulfilled. He gets his dream fulfilled. McCoy gets his dream fulfilled because Spock and Kirk are in sickbay and have to listen to anything he says. It's a cute episode. I feel like you get to see into Spock's upbringing a little bit, and his what it was like to be Spock, and the fact that he's sort of half Vulcan, half human, and can't really please anyone. There's a cute line where we find out that Spock had a pet that looks like a teddy bear, but it was alive and it had fangs. I feel like it's exactly how I think of Spock's childhood. It's super adorable, totally cool, and kind of horrible, probably. But yeah, I think this episode's all about wish fulfillment for all of these characters. We just really want to see all of them get what they want, and they do. I feel like the half Vulcan, half human thing could be talking about race, maybe, but in a very neutral, not revolutionary way. But it's a compelling storyline. And we have a few weird questions. I don't really understand why Spock's mom is just now being after all of these years, I just can't take rational anymore. And it's I really feel like you would have come to terms with that if I know. I don't really understand their romance, and they even point that out at the end, and he's like, what can I say? It was logical at the time. I really want to know why that was logical at the time. I don't know. I don't know. I can't quite buy the romance. They do this cute, kissing thing where they kiss me, Vulcan style. Yeah, they go like this. That's them kissing. I'm really curious, what level of public display of affection that is. Because to a human, it's oh, it's sort of quaint, but maybe, for Vulcans, that's, really heavy on the smooching.
This was fun. It all seems kind of gendered. It's hard to imagine the original series doing the same plot with a female Vulcan and a male human.
Apparently.
The Vulcans are pretty good at not giving you what you want from them.
But
we feel like he did that. I feel like he was actually giving Spock everything that Spock was at least willing to admit that he needed. It just wasn't what we as humans would project onto them that it should be. He respects him. Respects him enough to give him a cold shoulder at first, in revenge for Spock not becoming a scientist. So the introduction of the Andorians. The Andorians don't get a huge amount of play on screen in Star Trek because they're they require slightly more elaborate prostheses than the standard Star Trek alien, but they're huge in like the novelizations and spin-offs and stuff. Everybody loves a good Andorian in fan fiction.
Which one were the Andorians?
The ones that were secretly not Andorians.
The ones with the little...
With the antennae.
I liked the pink things. What were they?
That might have been the Tellarites.
They were super creepy because they were wearing these mask things. I mean, they're not supposed to be masks. It's supposed to be their face, but... And you couldn't, like, see their eyes. And they had these pink noses. It's pretty weird. It's fun to see, like... I feel like they put way more effort into making all the aliens look more alien for this episode than they do on a typical, like most Star Trek. It's like it's just another human with like maybe a funny outfit, maybe their skin is dyed a different color, but this one they like tried to make, you know, like alien looking creatures. I mean, they're still all humans clearly, but like there was some level of effort put into it. And they eat funny tie-dyed watermelon, which I thought was weird.
Yeah, they really tried to show that this is a diversity of species going on right now because that's the plot. And is necessary to justify the episode's title. So, Babel, as is presumably meant to evoke the Tower of Babel, with the story being that all of the races of man came together to build a great tower, and God decided he didn't want them to build the great tower. And there are some sources outside of the Bible that give us specific motivations here on both sides that say that the humans wanted to build a great tower so that even if God sent another flood, it wouldn't kill off all the humans. And God still wanted to maintain the option of killing off all humans, so he didn't want the tower to be built. But anyway, God says, well, this can't be. If all the races of man come together, there is nothing that they can't do if they work together. So he confuses their language and makes it so that they can't communicate with each other, and so they separate. So here we have all of these different alien species coming together to a neutral planetoid codenamed Babel. And the Orions, these spies who are posing as Andorians, or one of them is posing as an Andorian, want to prevent this unity because they're scavengers and war profiteers. And so they try to break them up. So this is a more subtle than normal case of Kirk battling God and defeating him, basically, with these lowlifes being put in the place of God. But weird tension there in that repeated thing in Star Trek. There's this subtle anti-theism, not atheism, but anti-theism, combined with occasional random outbursts of what sound like Christianity from various characters, and including Kirk, where Kirk tells Apollo, "No, we humans have only one God, all of us." And in the last episode we reviewed, it turns out that in addition to male and female being a universal constant, the idea that life can only be created by one being, the maker of all things, is a universal constant, despite the fact that we've seen already in previous episodes that you can put Humpty Dumpty back together again, that life is just a little trick of the neurons and stuff if you're a sufficiently advanced alien.
But how does that come up in this episode?
Well, in this episode, we just have the subtle anti-theism. I don't think we have any overt theism. But
where is it what do you mean anti-theism, and where do you see that?
Well, in general, I see the anti-theism in Star Trek in that God analogs are placed in the villain role. And here, the anti-theism is just that this is a sci-fi retelling of the Tower of Babel story, with the um, but but in this version, we hate the people who are trying to stop Babel from happening, and Kirk stops, and Kirk saves Babel, and Babel continues to happen. We got into a conversation while watching this about McCoy's continued disclaimers of inability to deal with Vulcan physiology.
Yeah, I think, I think McCoy is just speciesist or whatever, but he keeps being like, well, a Vulcan, like, I don't know how to care for Vulcans. And it's like, well, I mean, you should, right? Because you're, like, the chief medical officer of a ship that has a first officer that's a Vulcan. You'd think that someone aboard the ship would understand Vulcan physiology, and rather than be like kind of embarrassed about the fact that he doesn't know that, he is like protesting in like almost every episode the very notion that he should have to know about Vulcans. And I just find that like a little, I think that's one of the reasons I don't like McCoy, because it just strikes me as a little lazy and like a little defensive. It's like, I understand if you can't know about every species on the ship, although from what I can tell there's only 2, but whatever, like, you know, I imagine it's hard to be a doctor. I've never tried to be a doctor, and I imagine being a doctor for 2 types of species is very challenging, although veterinarians seem to be able to do that, but whatever. And every time there's a problem with any Vulcan ever, he's just like, I'm a doctor, not a Vulcan doctor. I don't know anything about Vulcans. Vulcans, oh my god, they're so challenging. And it's like, well, read a book or something, or be like, oh, I wish there was more room in my brain, but there isn't. I'm so sorry. Be apologetic about it? I don't know. That's my thing.
I agree that it's that it's a little obnoxious that he seems to often blame Spock for not having a human physiology instead of apologizing for not knowing about Vulcan physiology. I feel like where he's coming from is kind of, he's been through medical school to work with humans, and then has clearly really studied Vulcan physiology as extensively as he can, but he doesn't have the same breadth of understanding and practical experience with Vulcans as he does with humans. It's all out of books. And so he's insecure and defensive about his ability to minister to Vulcans, even though but he is always able to patch Spock back up after he takes a bullet for Kirk.
I think he's just speciesist, because he's always making fun of Vulcan's green blood and stuff like that. Here, I'll Vulcan kiss you. Oh, sounds right.